On my last night with Willow, she was unusually clingy. By chance, my fingers brushed against the ring on her hand. I remembered the rumors I had seen a few days earlier, news that Willow was about to enter a strategic marriage with the young master of the Ito family. Sensing my momentary distraction, the woman leaned in and initiated a lingering, entangled kiss. While I was lost in the haze, she slipped a bank card into my hand. "George, I'm getting married next month. Let's end this." I nodded calmly. "All right." Seeing that I neither argued nor made a scene, Willow frowned instead. "Are you okay?" I gave a light laugh and shook my head. "I'm fine." I had already passed the stage of not being fine. Everyone who knew us knew this. I loved Willow Lou, 3 years older than me, to the point of madness. From the age of 18, I chased after her relentlessly. The moment I graduated, I joined the Lou group and became her secretary. By day, I worked seamlessly with her. By night, I served her in bed. When danger appeared, I rushed to the front to shield her from harm. At drinking banquets, I stood before her and drank on her behalf. I carried notebooks in my bag all year round, 3 of them filled with her preferences. One look from her, and I could respond instantly. I spent 7 years by her side without a name or status. Eventually, people went from mocking me for my delusions to smiling and asking when the good news would come. No one believed I could calmly watch her marry another man. Not even Willow believed it. What they didn't know was that a week earlier, I had already agreed to return to my hometown and marry my childhood sweetheart, as my parents wished. Chapter 1. The first time I met Willow was when I was 18. I received a phone call from my mother. "George, your father was in a car accident. He's in the hospital being resuscitated. It's very serious. Come home quickly and see him one last time." My mind went blank. I bolted outside in panic and crashed straight into Willow's car. Thankfully, she slammed on the brakes in time. I wasn't badly hurt, and after scrambling up, I limped toward the hospital. Willow grabbed me, asked what had happened, made a phone call, and personally drove me to the hospital. When we arrived, the hospital director hurried into the operating room with the best medical team, pulling my father back from the brink of death. My mother and I held each other, crying tears of joy. Through my blurred vision, I saw Willow standing not far away, softly thanking the director. Only then did I learn that she was the one who had summoned him. In that instant, the girl standing in the light, cool-eyed and aloof, felt like a deity descending into my world. At first, I only wanted to thank her, so I followed behind her, doing whatever I could within my means. After graduation, I joined the Lou group. By chance, we crossed a line and became involved, and I became her personal secretary. Little by little, the nature of our relationship changed. In her occasional tenderness, desires I never should have had began to grow, until a month ago, when Willow suddenly became cold toward me, uneasy. I hesitated for a long time. One time after we were together, I cautiously asked her, "President Lou, did I do something wrong?" Willow Lou's icy gaze hardened. After a long pause, she said, "I'm a bit tired of it." My face drained of color. Under her indifferent eyes, I fled in disgrace. That same day, Willow went abroad on a business trip. For the first time ever, she didn't take me, her personal secretary, with her. The next day, I saw the rumors about her strategic marriage with Makoto. A week later, when Willow returned home, there was a wedding ring on her ring finger. That was when I knew that even the most beautiful dream must eventually end, and that it was time for me to part ways with Willow. Willow had already moved out and gave me the apartment that had trapped me for 7 years. As I packed up the apartment, I contacted an agent to put it on the market. The place was in a prime location, and I priced it well below market value. The agent focused on promoting it. That very evening, someone came to view the apartment and paid a deposit. After signing the contract, the agent smiled warmly. "Mr. Wong, the buyer is paying in full. The process should be completed in about a week." I froze for a moment, then smiled and nodded. "All right, thank you." After seeing him out, I began packing the rest of the place. The Lucky Fortune cat on the shoe cabinet was something I had set there the day I moved in. Willow laughed and called me money-obsessed, then pounced into my arms the moment I turned around, kissing me hungrily. She nipped at my earlobe, a faint smile on her lips as she teased, "Praying to that thing isn't as effective as praying to me." The rug in the living room was something she spotted in a mall while we were on an overseas business trip. She swiped her card and bought it. It took more than half a month to cross the ocean before arriving at the apartment. After I finished unwrapping the rug, she began unbuttoning my clothes, amusement flickering in the corners of her eyes. The moment I saw it, I knew it would be perfect to sleep on. The single sofa in the corner, on that rare occasion when she was gentle, was where she stayed by my side when I was sick with a fever, wiping me down again and again to bring the temperature down. The fountain pen I used most on the desk was the first gift I ever gave her. She used it for years. On the inside cover of Business Strategy on the far left of the bookshelf was a sketch, just a few casual strokes she'd drawn of me on a whim. 7 years was a very long time. Long enough that someone as reserved and aloof as Willow had left unforgettable memories with me in every corner of this home. I packed things up and threw them away as I went, until in the end, standing amid the mess, I broke down completely. I cried the entire night. In the morning, I iced my eyes for half an hour before the redness finally faded enough to be barely noticeable. I pulled out the resignation letter I had written long ago and went straight to the company. I had just sat down at my desk when I noticed my colleagues in the department looking at me with expressions that were subtle, yet full of sympathy. Chapter 2. Before I even had the chance to ask what was going on, the door to Willow's office was pushed open, and Makoto walked out. He was dressed in a custom-tailored suit, exuding the pampered confidence of a young heir raised by a powerful family. He moved through the company with ease, as though he were already the master of this entire building. Only then did I fully understand the source of my colleague's subtle, complicated looks. After all, everyone had assumed that I would be the one to marry Willow. Yet in the blink of an eye, Willow was engaged, and my position became painfully awkward. Makoto, however, seemed completely unbothered when he spotted me. With a friendly smile on his face, he handed me an invitation card and warmly invited me. Secretary Wong, good morning. A week from now is Willow's and my engagement banquet. I came especially to deliver invitations to everyone. You've been with Willow the longest. Secretary Wong, you must come and honor us with your presence. I immediately put on a polite smile and accepted the invitation with both hands. Congratulations to Mr. Ito and President Liu. The smile on Makoto Ito's face didn't change. He leaned in slightly and spoke with a laugh, his voice low enough that only the two of us could hear. I heard you always thought you could marry into the Liu family. What wishful thinking. Willow Liu was just using you to practice. Otherwise, how would she know how to make me comfortable after marriage? Open your eyes and see the gap between you and us clearly. Give up sooner rather than later. He kept smiling the whole time, his posture intimate. Anyone watching would have thought we were sharing a friendly secret. My expression didn't change, but the fingers gripping the invitation slowly turned pale. I could understand Makoto's behavior. After all, no man would want to see his wife's former lover lingering around. Still, my chest felt uncomfortably tight. I pressed my lips together and deliberately lowered myself even further. Rest assured, Mr. Ito, I know my place. There was a chill beneath Makoto's smile as he replied. You'd better. I've never liked gambling on whether others are self-aware enough. The next second, he grabbed my hand and suddenly threw his body backward. Before I could react, he had already fallen heavily to the ground. After letting out a cry, he looked up at me in shock. Secretary Wong, I kindly invited you to our engagement banquet. Why would you suddenly push me down? The office door flew open, and Willow strode out on long legs. Seeing Makoto on the ground, she hurried over and helped him up. Makoto, what happened? Makoto looked at her with reddened eyes. I was giving Secretary Wong an invitation, inviting him to our engagement banquet. He suddenly got upset, pushed me, and told me to get lost. Willow glanced at me, her eyes filled with coldness. I frowned and quickly tried to explain. I didn't, but Willow cut me off before I could finish, turning to Makoto and saying, what status does he have? Is it worth you personally inviting him? The air froze. Her merciless dismissal stabbed sharply into my chest. Makoto looked momentarily stunned, then quickly smiled again, playing the good guy. But he is your chief secretary. After all, I just wanted to help you keep talented people around. Willow directly hooked her arm through his and led him back into the office. As they walked, she spoke with an unmistakably possessive tone. You're the future husband of the company's boss. No one matters more than you. Where did you twist your ankle? Let me see. I stood there expressionless, watching their retreating figures. Makoto was clearly impatient. He couldn't even wait for my resignation letter. And yet, with acting this clumsy, how could Willow not see through it? She saw it clearly. She simply chose to protect him. We were all adults. Some kinds of fairness can't be begged for with tears or tantrums. My chest felt bitter as I calmly took out the resignation letter. Just as I was about to go in and ask Willow to sign it, she suddenly walked out. The woman's figure was slender and graceful, her clothes fluttering slightly as she walked. Her long fingers tapped lightly on my desk as she issued a direct order. Makoto doesn't want to see you. Resign. Her cold, beautiful eyes held not a trace of warmth. My heart trembled. I clenched the resignation letter I had prepared long ago. I had worked diligently at the Liu Group for 7 years. I had never imagined I would leave in such a humiliating way. I gave a bitter smile and nodded slowly. All right. My calm, tearless response seemed to irritate Willow for no clear reason. She frowned and said, leave today. I'll have finance compensate you double. I smiled faintly. Understood. Thank you, President Liu. Willow turned and walked away without another word. I sat back down at my desk, tore the now redundant resignation letter into pieces, and submitted my resignation directly through the company system. Perhaps Willow had already spoken to HR. The application was approved almost instantly and routed straight to her. Immediately after, A notification popped up on my screen. Your resignation request has been approved. Almost at the same time, a large severance payment was deposited into my account. I quickly packed up my things. As I carried them out, I passed by Willow's office. The door wasn't fully closed, leaving a narrow gap. Inside, Willow sat with her head lowered, reviewing documents. Makoto sat beside her, eating a dessert. He took a bite himself, then scooped up another spoonful and fed it to Willow. Try this, it's really good. Willow ate the small cake using the spoon he had just used, without frowning at all. It is pretty good. I looked at her face and let out a self-mocking smile. On my very first day at work, I learned that Willow had two absolute boundaries. First, she was a germaphobe and never shared utensils with anyone. In the beginning, she wouldn't even kiss me in bed. Our first kiss happened only because I had a fever. My head was burning, and while talking to her, my lips accidentally brushed against hers. I was so frightened that my face turned pale, but she lazily lowered her head and kissed me instead. Back then, I thought I was different to her. Second, she hated sweets. In 7 years by her side, I had never once seen her eat dessert. When I occasionally bought myself a small cake on a whim, she wouldn't even spare it a glance. I memorized all these preferences carefully, filling 3 thick notebooks, terrified that one wrong step might displease her. But it turned out my so-called secret manual was nothing but a joke. When she met the right person, she was willing to tolerate everything. I took out that heavy notebook, gave a self-deprecating smile, then tossed it into the trash without hesitation and turned to leave. Willow lifted her gaze from the documents. Through the narrow crack of the door, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure passing by, and for a brief moment, she was distracted. Chapter 3. After I got home, I told a few friends that I was resigning and returning to my hometown. We agreed to have a meal together the next day. I thought there would probably be no more chances in this lifetime for me to see Willow again. Yet unexpectedly, as I followed the waiter toward our private room, the corner of my eye caught a familiar figure on the second floor. Willow was standing by the railing with her friends, enjoying the breeze. Her back was to me, her silhouette inexplicably carrying a hint of loneliness. I only glanced once before lowering my head, pretending I hadn't seen her, but the wind carried Willow's voice to my ears. I heard one of her friends ask, "You're really planning to marry Makoto? Secretary Wang has been by your side for so many years, we all thought you'd marry him." Willow's tone was flat. "I never considered it." Her friend laughed and teased. "Aside from his family background, Secretary Wang is good-looking, capable, and utterly devoted to you. After all these years, you never once felt moved." Willow fell silent for 2 seconds. Then her thin, indifferent voice drifted to me with the wind. How could I possibly allow myself to develop feelings for a plaything? My face turned deathly pale in an instant. I stood there in a daze. It wasn't until I met the waiter's probing, puzzled gaze that I clenched my fingertips tightly and followed him forward step by step. The meal tasted like nothing at all. My friends were all college roommates. They knew about my feelings for Willow over the years. When they learned I was returning to my hometown, they were happy for me and heartbroken for me at the same time. Everyone drank quite a bit. After the liveliness faded, I watched as each of them was picked up by a wife or girlfriend, leaving me alone once again. Just as I was about to leave, my phone suddenly rang. I looked down, and it was Willow's number. I was about to hang up, but my finger accidentally tapped the answer button. Frowning, I was just about to end the call when a strange voice came through. "Hello, is this Mr. George?" I froze. "Yes, this is he." The other party spoke politely. "Mr. Wang, Miss Liu is drunk. Could you please come and take her home? We're at." Willow never drank excessively. Given her status, very few people even dared to pressure her to drink. How could she be drunk? I didn't bother questioning how the waiter had gotten my number. I simply replied distantly, "Sorry, it's not convenient for me to come. Please contact her fiancé to pick her up." No sooner had I finished speaking than I suddenly heard the waiter's startled cry from the other end. Miss Liu, what's wrong? Miss Liu." The call was abruptly cut off. My expression changed instantly. Panic surged through me. My body moved before my mind could react. Sprinting toward the second floor, I rushed straight into the private room and shouted anxiously, "Willow." As the door flew open, I saw Willow Liu leaning back against a chair, her expression dark and gloomy. Her right palm was a bloody mess. Shards of broken glass were scattered across the table and the floor by her feet. The waiter stood nearby, his face full of alarm. Yet Willow herself looked cold, as though the injured person wasn't her at all. Hearing my voice, she turned her head to look at me. Her eyes shadowed and bleak. Her voice was hoarse, tinged with a faint, almost imperceptible grievance. "Didn't you say you weren't coming?" Chapter 4. I let out a silent sigh. "Let me tend to your wound first." Willow neither agreed nor refused. Her attitude was a little strange. When I stepped closer, I caught the strong scent of alcohol on her and guessed that she really was drunk. She had probably forgotten that I was no longer her secretary. The waiter looked as if he'd been granted a reprieve and hurried off to fetch the restaurant's first aid kit. After years by Willow's side, I had deliberately learned quite a bit of emergency care to handle unexpected situations. By now, these things came naturally to me. I leaned in and looked at her mangled, bloodied palm, my brow knitting instinctively. It's going to hurt a bit. Bear with it. I carefully removed the glass shards embedded in her palm and applied medicine. Then, like coaxing a child, I unconsciously blew gently on the wound. The woman seated above me watched my gentle, focused profile, her gaze softening slightly. I treated the wound carefully and neatly, finishing with a pretty bow. Smiling at her, I said, "Miss Lou, it's bandaged." Before I could finish, Willow suddenly reached up with her uninjured hand, cupped my cheek, and leaned down to kiss me. Her kiss was intense and proactive, charged with an emotion I couldn't name. My eyes widened instantly as I stared at her in shock. The next second, without hesitation, I placed both hands on her shoulders and pushed her away. Instead, I lost my balance and fell back onto the floor, still staring at her in disbelief. Willow sat above me, looking down, her voice rough. "George, actually, it wouldn't matter if you didn't leave." My heart was immediately seized by a silent, crushing pain. She drove me away one day, then said it didn't matter if I stayed the next. Just moments earlier, she had told others I was nothing more than a plaything. I could clearly see the desire in her eyes, and all I felt was absurdity and bitter irony. "Willow, we're over. You said it yourself. If you keep clinging like this, I'll start to think you've fallen in love with me." Willow's pupils shrank. The emotions in her eyes instantly dissipated, replaced by coldness. Just then, her phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Makoto's name. I raised my voice deliberately. "Miss Lou, your fiancé is calling you." Willow lowered her gaze to the phone screen, her expression turning completely cold. "Get out." I stood up from the floor and quickly left the private room. The moment I stepped outside, I heard what sounded like a phone being smashed behind me. I paused briefly, but this time, I didn't turn back. I kept walking. Once outside the restaurant, I hurriedly hailed a taxi and left. Not long after getting in, I caught the driver's hesitant expression in the rearview mirror. Dazed, I pulled out a mirror and took a look. Only then did I realize my lips were smeared with Willow's lipstick, staining the corners of my mouth. I looked utterly disheveled. In a haze, I remembered one night when Willow had rarely stayed over at the apartment. The next morning, we got up together to head to work. Willow leaned over the vanity to do her makeup. By the time she finished, she noticed that I was standing behind her without her knowing when I'd gotten there. Suddenly intrigued, she personally picked out a lipstick and motioned for me to help her apply it. It was my first time putting lipstick on her. Afraid of messing it up, I was extremely careful. Willow puckered her lips cooperatively. Just as I finally finished and let out a breath of relief, she suddenly played a prank, wrapping her arms around my neck and kissing me. When Willow finally pulled away, my lips were smeared with lipstick, a mess that was both awkward and intimate. And Willow laughed like a cat delighted by a successful prank. Pulling myself out of the memory, I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and realized I was already crying uncontrollably. Chapter 5. The next morning, as soon as I woke up, I received a message from a former colleague. "George, I found a jade pendant by your workstation. Do you still want it?" They sent a photo along with the message. I opened it and realized it was a birthday gift my mother had given me 2 years ago, something I'd always cherished. I guessed that I must have left it behind in my haste when I resigned. I immediately arranged to meet my former colleague for a meal. I arrived early. After ordering at the restaurant we often went to during workdays, I suddenly saw Makoto walking toward me from not far away. There was none of his usual friendly smile on his face. Instead, he looked cold as he headed straight for me. I couldn't help frowning as I spoke up. "You." Before I could finish, Makoto suddenly raised his hand and slapped me hard across the face. Smack. Along with the slap came his deliberately raised voice. "Trash. You've already been kicked out of the company, and you still dare to seduce my fiancé." The restaurant fell instantly silent. Everyone stared at us in shock. My head snapped to the side from the blow. Only then did I realize that Makoto was taking out his anger from the previous night on me. My cheek burned with pain. Around us, whispers quickly spread. "Is this someone beating up a homewrecker? This is intense. Serves him right. So handsome, yet he chooses to be a third party. Isn't that the Ito family's young master and Secretary Wang? I heard Secretary Wang was President Liu's lover for years. Now that he's fallen out of favor, the legitimate partner is coming after him. How pitiful. What's pitiful about it? Look at his status versus Makoto's. Does he even deserve to compete with the Ito heir for a woman?" My whole body trembled. Meeting Makoto's malicious gaze, I turned to leave, but Makoto refused to let me go. With an air of arrogance, he issued a cold warning. "George, trash like you, I can grab a whole bunch anytime I want. Don't think that just because you followed Willow for 7 years, you're somehow special. I'm warning you, don't ever appear in front of Willow and me again. Otherwise, I can make sure you don't just get kicked out of the Lu group, I can make it impossible for you to stay in a city at all. My expression turned completely cold as I looked back at Makoto Ito. You can rest assured, young Master Ito, Willow and I have long since cut all ties. I've already agreed to go home and meet someone for an arranged marriage. Instead of wasting so much effort coming here to warn me, you'd be better off keeping your woman in check. Don't let her come bothering me again. I deliberately mentioned my plan to leave, but upon hearing it, Makoto assumed I was boasting that Willow had been the one to seek me out. His expression grew even uglier, a trace of venom flashing across his face. Going home for an arranged marriage? More like going home to learn from your dad how to seduce women. I heard your father was in a car accident once and ended up crippled, a useless man, and even then, he still got to stay at the university as a professor. I hear it's because he has some kind of improper relationship with the female principal. You grew up immersed in that environment, that's why you do something so shameless. Seducing someone else's fiancé, like father, like son. His words were sharp and grating. I couldn't listen anymore. Shut up. I grabbed the coffee in front of me and threw it straight at his face. Ah. Coffee splattered all over him. He stared at me in disbelief, shaking with rage. George, you dare splash me, you piece of trash, I won't let this go. My face was icy. If you don't clean up your mouth, I won't just splash you, I'll hit you. The moment my words fell, Willow's figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the restaurant. After taking in the scene inside, she walked straight toward us. Makoto immediately complained to her. Willow, I was just talking to him, and he splashed coffee on me. My face turned livid with anger. It was clearly you who insulted my family. Before I could finish, Willow took a glass of ice water from a passing waiter. With a flick of her wrist, she poured it straight over my head. The icy water cut off the rest of my words, and extinguished the last faint stirrings of emotion I still harbored for her. Chapter 6. The icy water streamed from the top of my head down into my clothes, making me shiver uncontrollably. My hair clung wetly to my face. I looked utterly miserable. Willow looked at my eyes, rimmed with tears from humiliation that I was forcing back. Apologized to Makoto. Of course, to Willow. It had always been this way. She never cared about right or wrong. She only protected whoever she wanted to protect. After a brief moment of shock, Makoto at her side quickly put on a smug expression, looking at me provocatively as he waited for my apology. I spoke blankly. And if I don't? Willow's expression was cold and heartless. Bullying my fiancé, do you believe I can make it impossible for you to stay in a city? The money in your account, you won't get to take a single cent with you. I let out a bitter laugh. They all thought I stayed with her for the money. They thought I was unwilling to give up the glamour of this big city, clinging on no matter the cost. They never knew that I had stayed here for her in the first place. And as for her money, my hands trembling, I opened my wallet, took out the bank card Willow had once given me, and placed it on the table. The money, take it back. A city, I'm done with it. Anyway, I'm going home for an arranged meeting. When Willow heard the words arranged meeting, her pupils shrank abruptly. Seeing me about to leave, she panicked and hurried after me. But after only a couple of steps, her vision suddenly went dark, and she pitched forward. Hearing the commotion, I turned around and rushed toward her. Willow. She collapsed unconscious into my arms. I was terrified. I quickly picked her up and rushed her to the hospital. Willow was soon taken in for examinations, but when I received the test results and saw the words on them, I fell completely silent. I stayed by Willow's hospital bed the entire time. Looking at her face, cool and beautiful even in sleep, my emotions were unbearably complicated. Willow soon woke up. Meeting my concerned gaze, she frowned slightly. What happened to me? I knew there was no point hiding it. I handed her the pregnancy test report I'd been clutching all this time. Willow took it. When she saw the words 6 weeks pregnant, her face darkened instantly. She'd had little appetite lately, and her period had been delayed, because she'd long been overworked and suffered from hormonal imbalance. Her cycle was irregular. She hadn't paid much attention. She had never imagined that it was pregnancy. I opened my mouth, but when I saw the livid look on her face, the words I wanted to say died in my throat. I wanted to beg her to keep the child, but that was absolutely impossible. Willow noticed my expression and gave a soft, mocking scoff. You know very well that I would never keep this child, don't you? My face instantly turned deathly pale. A sneer curved Willow's lips. My child will only ever be born within marriage. I will only bear children for my husband. Anything else is just a bastard that should never exist in this world. Go inform the doctor. Schedule the procedure for tomorrow. I want it taken care of as soon as possible. My voice trembled. My body swayed slightly, but I still answered slowly. All right. I contacted the doctor and scheduled Willow's abortion. Since the child was connected to me, I wanted to stay at the hospital to look after her for the night, but she drove me out. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, I still went quietly to the hospital. Soon, I saw Willow being wheeled into the operating room. About an hour later, she was pushed back out. Her face was much paler than before. After resting briefly in the ward, Willow was discharged directly. When she left the hospital, she had already changed into a formal gown. Her pale complexion was completely concealed beneath flawless makeup. There was no sign of weakness at all. I glanced at the date. I didn't need to guess to know where she was going. And yet, like an act of self-torture, I hailed a taxi and followed her car. Sure enough, Willow soon arrived at her engagement venue with Makoto. A faint smile rested on her lips as she held Makoto intimately. Accepting congratulations from guest after guest, I watched for a long time, feeling both bitter and ironically amused. She was truly ruthless. Ruthless to me, and ruthless to herself. One moment she aborted our child. The next, she got engaged to another man. As I stared blankly, recalling her cold decisiveness when she ordered the abortion, the last trace of lingering attachment in my heart shattered completely. I went straight home. After handing the apartment over to the buyer, I picked up the suitcase I had packed long ago and headed directly to the airport. The former colleague who had tricked me into going to the restaurant sent an apologetic message. "I'm sorry. I was forced by Makoto." I didn't blame him, but I didn't reply either. I simply blocked and deleted him. Makoto, who kept sending engagement videos to provoke me, blocked and deleted. Willow, whose chat history I had never once had the heart to clear no matter how many phones I changed, blocked and deleted. As the plane lifted off, I curved my lips into a pale smile. "Willow, you saved my father's life and took our child's life. From this moment on, I owe you nothing. Goodbye, forever." Chapter 7. At the engagement banquet, Willow found herself drifting off again and again. Everything was unfolding exactly according to the plan she had set. Yet she felt no joy or satisfaction at all. She felt unwell, an indescribable discomfort spreading from her body straight to her heart. Her chest felt stifled, and George's pale face kept flashing through her mind. She forced herself to hold on until the banquet finally ended. Makoto leaned in close, lifted his arm around her slender waist, and pulled her nearer. When Willow had collapsed earlier, George had been the first to rush her to the hospital. Makoto didn't know about the abortion. The engagement banquet had gone smoothly, and he was in a very good mood. His fingers lingered at her waist, deliberately suggestive as they teased and traced. "Willow, from today on, you're mine, marked with my name. Makoto's. No one will ever be able to take you away again." The moment she caught his scent, Willow's first instinct was disgust, an urge to push him away. The perfume Makoto wore was far too sweet and cloying. Not like George, who rarely used cologne at all. George carried a faint scent of soap, clean and refreshing. It lingered lightly at the tip of her nose, never aggressive, yet impossible to ignore. Just like the man himself, quietly becoming familiar, silently ingraining himself into one's habits. Still, she restrained herself, curved her lips casually, and replied, "You're Makoto. Who would dare compete with you?" Makoto chuckled softly, a trace of darkness flickering through his eyes. Naturally, he thought of George, but at a moment like this, he wouldn't bring up George himself and ruin the atmosphere. "Willow, now that we've confirmed our relationship, I've actually wanted this for a long time. Tonight, we could." As he spoke, he lowered his gaze to Willow's cool, beautiful face. She had been with George for 7 years. Even he had heard plenty of rumors about their affair. He was eager, desperate, even, to conquer her. Makoto's gaze hardened. He suddenly lowered his head and moved in toward her lips. However, just as his lips were about to touch Willow's, her expression changed abruptly. Almost instinctively, she turned her head aside and raised her hand, pushing Makoto away. His lips only managed to brush past her cheek before, caught completely off guard, he was shoved backward and fell to the ground. His face darkened instantly. Willow froze as well. Her reaction had been entirely unconscious. She frowned, then bent down to pull Makoto up, saying, "Sorry, I'm a bit tired today. I didn't react in time just now." Though she said this, she made no move to kiss him again. Makoto's body trembled slightly, humiliation and resentment churning inside him. He forced himself to speak calmly. "It's fine. I was too impatient. We can take our time getting used to each other." Willow didn't continue comforting him, only said flatly, "There are still some matters at the company. I'll have the driver take you home first." Without waiting for Makoto's response, she waved over the driver and instructed him to see Makoto off. Though the two families were now engaged, after the engagement they still lived separately. Makoto looked at the woman's indifferent expression, clenched his teeth, and followed the driver away. The moment he turned his back, Willow couldn't quite hold it in. She raised her hand and wiped the spot on her cheek where Makoto's lips had brushed past, unmistakable disdain flashing across her face. The Liu family didn't truly need a marriage alliance to elevate their status, but they did need a union of equals, a powerful match with another prominent family. She had thought she could adapt. After all, Makoto was the future husband she herself had chosen. In the future, they would do all the most intimate things two people could do together. But using the spoon he had already used, her first reaction was to rinse her mouth. Every time he held her, she wanted to push him away. When he tried to kiss her, her instinct was to dodge. Even when Makoto hinted that they could live together after the engagement, she pretended not to understand and let it slide. These instinctive reactions might fool others, but they couldn't fool her. George surfaced in Willow's thoughts again and again. Every time she remembered the shattered look on his face when he heard her say she would terminate the pregnancy, the tightness in her chest grew worse. Willow stepped out of the banquet hall and got straight into the car. Chapter 8. Willow felt restless. She leaned forward and rummaged through the storage compartment in the passenger seat, pulling out several notebooks. If George had been there, he would have realized that these were the very notebooks he had thrown into the trash. A woman like Willow, yet she had actually retrieved things from a garbage bin. Luckily, the trash bag had just been replaced at the time, so the notebooks hadn't been dirted. Willow opened one of them and stared at the familiar handwriting, her mind drifting. The notebooks recorded every little detail George had observed since entering the Lou group. Everything inside revolved around her. Key point: Miss Lou has severe germophobia. Always prepare disinfectant wipes. Miss Lou dislikes bitter melon. Willow likes citrus-flavored ultra-thin. Occasionally, he would jot down small incidents, analyzing her mood at the time and the things she was sensitive about. Sometimes, he even recorded moments when he had been scolded for making mistakes, with a small doodle of a wronged little boy drawn beside the notes. Looking at that simple cartoon boy, she could almost see his aggrieved expression. In her mind, she seemed to relive the entire process, from the nervous young man who had just joined the company, cautious and afraid of making mistakes, to the polished, tactful, professional secretary Wang he later became. When George left that day, he had caught a glimpse of her through the crack in the door. In truth, she had also seen his profile. The cake, she had eaten it on purpose. After sending Makoto away, driven by some inexplicable impulse, she had gone to the place George had been standing and retrieved those 3 notebooks. Willow's fingers tightened unconsciously around the papers in her hand. The next second, she stuffed the notebooks back into the compartment, started the car, and headed straight for the hospital. She wanted to see him. The Rolls-Royce sped down the road, almost leaving afterimages in its wake, and before long, it arrived at the apartment. Standing at the door, Willow habitually pressed her finger against the scanner. The keypad responded, fingerprint not recognized. She tried twice more, still no response. Willow's heart skipped. A vague, heavy suffocation rose in her chest. Her face paled slightly. Just as she was about to enter the password, the door suddenly opened from the inside. A flash of joy rose in her eyes as she looked up immediately. George. The words died on her lips. Standing at the doorway was an unfamiliar man and woman, both looking at her with guarded expressions. Who are you? Why are you trying to unlock our door? Chapter 9. Willow frowned deeply, her voice icy. Who are you? Where's George? The two of them froze. The woman reacted first and nudged her husband. She's the previous homeowner. The men suddenly understood. Seeing that Willow was elegantly dressed and striking in appearance, he spoke politely. He sold the apartment to us. He's already moved out. Said he was going back to his hometown for an arranged marriage and to get married. Panic surged through Willow's chest. She shoved past the men and rushed straight into the apartment. The once familiar home had already been completely transformed. Every small item she and George had accumulated over the years, gone. Not a single one left behind. The large furniture like the sofa was still there, but now it was covered with the belongings of this unfamiliar couple. There wasn't a trace left of her and George's life together. She naturally didn't believe that he'd really gone home for an arranged marriage. She assumed it was just an excuse he'd used to sell the place. But the truth was, he had truly left. Her voice came out hoarse. When was the apartment sold? A week ago. Willow's chest tightened painfully. A week ago. That was the day she told him to end things. That day, George had been unusually cooperative. No matter how she pushed or tested him, he simply agreed to everything. When she proposed breaking it off, he hadn't reacted much at all, as if he'd long anticipated this moment, quietly accepting it. So it turned out that he'd already made up his mind to leave back then. Willow couldn't quite describe what she was feeling right now. When she decided to cut George loose, she'd even worried that he might cling desperately to her. After all, everyone knew how much George loved her. No one believed he would give up so easily. His compliance, she'd thought it was just strategic retreat. But now, he'd really left, cleanly, decisively. And instead, she felt an unexpected emptiness. She had assumed that even if George resigned, he would stay in a city and find another job. She never imagined he'd go straight back to his hometown. Standing in this apartment once filled with traces of her intimacy with George, Willow couldn't accept that it now belonged to someone else. She pulled a card from her wallet and looked expressionlessly at the couple. I'll pay you double. Sell the apartment back to me. The couple had struck gold. They happily packed up their things and left in short order. Willow sat down on the sofa. After a few seconds of silence, She took out her phone and sent George a message. "Why did you sell the apartment?" The moment the message was sent, a glaring red exclamation mark popped up. Willow stared fixedly at the line beneath it. After a long moment, she clenched her molars and let out a humorless laugh. "George, you really have some nerve. You actually blocked me." She dialed George's number. Sure enough, she was blocked there too. Willow sneered softly and immediately called her special assistant. "Find out George's hometown address for me." Chapter 10. Dragging my exhausted body. I boarded the plane. Not long after takeoff, I fell asleep. Almost immediately, I sank into a nightmare. I dreamed of a little girl. She looked 5 or 6 parts like Willow and stood across from me, separated by a wide river. She stayed on the opposite bank, crying as she looked at me, calling out over and over, "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy want me? Daddy." My heart felt as if it were being cut by knives. I kept apologizing desperately. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Overwhelmed with grief, I woke up crying. The moment I opened my eyes, I met a pair of gentle, warm eyes. It belonged to a woman about my age, delicate-featured and pretty. She looked at me with a mild expression. "Are you okay?" I instinctively shook my head. "I'm fine. Just had a nightmare." She smiled softly, a little amused. "Then could you sit up straight first? I might need to go change my clothes." Only then did I realize that after falling asleep, my head had tilted onto the shoulder of the woman in the neighboring seat. When I cried during the nightmare, my tears had soaked into her shoulder as well. My face instantly burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the dry cleaning." She laughed. "Don't be nervous. It's just a piece of clothing." She soon returned after changing into something else. Sensing my awkwardness, she took the initiative to extend her hand. "Anna." I hurriedly reached out and shook her hand. "George." When Anna heard my name, she raised an eyebrow. "Professor Aiden Wong's son." I froze. "You know my dad?" Anna smiled. "I'm your blind date." I stared at her in disbelief, never imagining things could be this coincidental. My hometown, Orange City, was a 2-hour flight away from a city. Back when I was studying in a city, my father came there for an academic exchange and brought my mother along, hoping to visit my school. On the way, they were involved in a car accident. After my father was saved, he recuperated in a city for some time before returning to Orange City. The two of them had stayed in our hometown ever since. They knew I worked at the Liu Group and that I was Willow Liu's secretary, but they didn't know about my other relationship with her. The two of them were deeply grateful to Willow for helping back then. Every time they sent me local specialties from home, they would have me deliver a portion to Willow as well. Even when they went up the mountain to pray for a safety talisman for me, they would always get an extra one for her. Only now, as I was getting older, had the two elders begun urging me to return home for a blind date. I agreed casually and hadn't paid much attention to who the match was. Seeing my surprised and awkward expression, Anna continued on her own initiative. "My dad and your dad used to be colleagues. Our families lived right next door to each other. Later, when my dad transferred to a city for work, we moved away. When we were kids, we played together all the time. You don't remember?" As she spoke, she even made a gesture we often used as children. The vague scenes in my memory were suddenly swept clear, as if a large hand brushed away the fog, and everything rushed back at once. I blurted out, "It's you, the little crybaby." Anna laughed helplessly. "It's me." I couldn't help but look at her more closely. Her cheeks were slightly red from shyness as she muttered, "But I don't cry anymore." The little girl who used to cry so easily had grown up, now gentle and graceful. Yet if you looked closely at her oval face, you could still vaguely see traces of her childhood features. Once her identity was confirmed, and with those childhood memories as a bridge, the unfamiliarity between us quickly faded. Seeing that Anna was also heading back to Orange City, I hesitated but still asked politely, "Didn't your family already settle in a city? This time back to Orange City?" Anna didn't hide anything and smiled. "Uncle Wang called my parents and said you were going back home. He asked me to come back first and meet you. They're getting older too and want to return to the hometown for retirement. They had me come back first to look at houses. I hadn't expected to run into my blind date before I even reached home. Fortunately, it was Anna. As we chatted along the way, I gradually forgot about the nightmare. Since Anna didn't have a place to stay for the time being, I carried her luggage the whole way and took her home for a meal. The moment my parents saw her, there was no way they would let her leave. By the time I realized what was happening, my mother had already made the bed in the guest room and arranged for Anna to stay at the Wang house during her time back home. And just like that, Anna stayed. I accompanied her around Orange City to look at houses. In the end, Anna bought the apartment directly across the hall from my parents. Chapter 11. George had filled in his hometown address on his employment records from the very beginning. Over the years, his parents had even frequently mailed things to him from back home. Finding his address was never difficult. Yet after the restlessness in her heart gradually cooled, Willow stared at that long string of an address and still did nothing. Everything in the apartment that she could remember, she had arranged to be restored. It wasn't a perfect replica, but at least 80 or 90% of it looked the same as when George had still been there. For an entire month, she went to work as usual and handled company matters, met Makoto from time to time for dates, and occasionally returned to the Liu family estate to have meals with her parents. On the surface, everything looked normal, but Willow knew nothing was the same anymore. There was no longer George's busy figure in the apartment. Even the faint trace of his presence had faded, existing only in her memory. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she would habitually turn over to wrap an arm around his waist. Her hand would grasp at empty air instead. She would jolt awake, staring blankly at the empty space beside her. While handling documents in the office, she would instinctively press the intercom and say, "George, come in." Only when met with the new secretary's awkward silence on the other end would she realize he had already resigned. The new secretary was competent enough, but the coffee she poured was never placed in the most convenient spot for Willow's hand. Just like now, Willow had accidentally consumed something containing mango juice and was having an allergic reaction. Her skin began to itch as rashes appeared. The new secretary turned pale with fright and hurriedly said, "President Liu, I'll take you to the hospital right away." Willow calmly set down her wineglass and was about to leave with the secretary when her gaze was suddenly drawn to a figure at the entrance of the banquet hall. Her eyes widened instantly. She stared at him in disbelief. "George?" Chapter 12. I hadn't expected to return to a city so soon. Anna was full of energy. She had started her own business back in college, caught several major trends, and over the years her company had grown at breakneck speed. By now, she was already a rising star in a city's business circle. The Su Group and the Liu Group turned out to be in the same industry. Back when I was Willow's secretary, I dealt with the Su Group many times, but it had never once crossed my mind that this company belonged to my childhood companion. I rested at home for nearly a month. After learning about my previous work experience, Anna took the initiative to invite me to join her company. Anna Su intended to gradually shift the company's core business back to Orange City. During this period, I followed her back and forth between the two cities. I was extremely busy and hardly thought about Willow anymore. Sometimes a city is enormous, so big that Anna and I had been in the same city, the same circles, for so many years, yet never once crossed paths. And sometimes a city is unbearably small, so small that the very first time I followed Anna to a business function, I ran into Willow. When I heard her voice, I lifted my eyes and looked toward her. My gaze swept briefly over the dish beside her, one that had clearly already been taken a bite from. I caught sight of her new secretary's expression, on the verge of tears, and noticed several red welts already surfacing on the side of her face. "President Liu, are you having an allergic reaction?" Her secretary still remembered how capable I'd been back when I worked at the company. He hurriedly nodded, his voice trembling with fear. "Yes, Secretary Wang. It's my fault. I didn't notice there was mango juice in it." President Liu only took one bite, but she still reacted. Allergic reactions could be mild or severe, and Willow had a severe allergy constitution. In just a few sentences, the rash on her neck already looked worse. I took a tablet of allergy medication from the inner pocket of my wallet and handed it to Willow Liu. "Miss Liu, I happen to have an allergy pill with me. If you don't mind, you can take it first." Willow's eyes brightened slightly. She stared at me for a few seconds, then reached out, took the pill, and put it straight into her mouth. We both thought of the past. That had been shortly after I first joined the Liu Group. Willow was allergic to many things. I had been extremely careful, yet she still accidentally ingested an allergen, broke out in hives, and even developed throat swelling and difficulty breathing. I was terrified and rushed her to the hospital immediately. Only after confirming she wasn't in danger did I finally relax, and then I held her and cried. From that day on, I became even more cautious and developed the habit of carrying allergy medicine in my wallet. Even after leaving, that habit had never changed. To Willow, it felt as though the heavy cloud that had been pressing down on her for a full month had suddenly been brushed aside by George with a simple lift of his hand. Her world cleared instantly, as if the rain had passed. She looked at me deeply, then was escorted to the hospital by her secretary. I glanced at her retreating figure, then calmly continued socializing with Anna. Willow went straight to the hospital, underwent examinations, took more medication, and was put on an 4-drip. Because she had taken the allergy medicine in time, the reaction wasn't too severe. After the 4, the symptoms had mostly subsided. Once the secretary paid the fees, Willow told him to go off work. She was left alone in the hospital room, idly turning her phone between her fingers. Urgent footsteps sounded outside the room. Willow looked up and saw Makoto rushing in. His steps hurried. He looked full of concern. "Willow, I heard you had an allergic reaction. You scared me to death. How are you now?" Willow looked at him coldly. She hadn't paid Makoto any attention for several days. Over the past month, Makoto had gone to the Liu Group multiple times to assert his claim. He had watched any male employees with decent competence like a hawk. A few had even been privately warned and pressured by him, forcing 2 longtime employees to resign. A week earlier, Makoto had even secretly followed her. While she was away from home, he had sneaked into the apartment, trying to seduce her. Most critically of all, she had uncovered some very interesting information. Now, facing Makoto's anxious expression, Willow let out a soft scoff. Did you rush over because you heard I had an allergic reaction? Or because you heard George is back, and you're afraid he'll threaten your position? Makoto's expression twisted for a split second before he forced himself to look innocent and aggrieved. Willow, of course I came because I was worried about you. I'm your fiancé. How could you doubt my sincerity? The little patience Willow still had for him had long since been worn away by his non-stop antics over the past month. She looked at him coldly. Makoto, you should also remember, you're only my fiancé. The alliance between our families is nothing more than mutual benefit. You've crossed the line. Let's cancel the engagement. Just then, her phone chimed. Willow immediately opened it. On the screen was George's current address. She ripped the 4 needle from the back of her hand, tossed it aside, and stood up, striding toward the door. Cancel the engagement. Makoto's head buzzed. He stared at her back in disbelief. As Willow reached the doorway, Makoto's face flushed red with rage and agitation. He finally couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, Willow, stop right there. Willow didn't slow down. Makoto rushed forward and blocked her path. Willow, I don't agree. This engagement isn't child's play. How can you cancel it just because you say so? The engagement banquet was so grand, everyone knows I'm your fiancé. If you cancel it now, how am I supposed to face people in the future? Yes, I shouldn't have sneaked into your apartment, but I'm your fiancé. We've been engaged for so long and you haven't even touched me once. Is it wrong for me to want to be closer to you? He looked at Willow with a face full of grievance. She merely lowered her gaze indifferently, her expression growing colder by the second. Makoto, the moment you plotted to make me pregnant, then planned to have the bastard in your ex-girlfriend's belly replace my child, you should have thought about the consequences. With that, she brushed past the stunned Makoto and strode away. Makoto's legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor. It was over. Willow knew. Chapter 13. Makoto clenched his fists tightly, panic flooding his heart. His relationship with his ex-girlfriend had been nothing more than casual fun. The one he had truly liked all along was Willow. In the past, Willow had never been interested in men. For all these years, the only person by her side had been George. That was why Makoto had fooled around with a few women, to pass the time and stave off loneliness. He never expected that just after learning the Liu family intended to form a marriage alliance with the Ito family, his ex-girlfriend would unexpectedly discover she was pregnant. She came to threaten him. If he made her give birth to the child, she would go straight to Willow. Makoto was terrified the truth would come out, that Willow would abandon him. At the same time, he couldn't bear to give up his own child. That was why he first placated his ex-girlfriend and agreed that, when the time came, they would secretly swap the 2 children. But he had never imagined that Willow would find out about his plan with his ex-girlfriend. Staring fixedly at her retreating figure, he shouted unwillingly, Willow, even if you cancel the engagement with me, do you really think that if you marry some other rich heir, he'll be clean? Or do you want to marry George, with a family background that ordinary? Do you think the Liu family would accept him? Only I am the most suitable match for you. However, Willow didn't turn her head. Her steps didn't pause for even a second because of his words. Makoto clenched his fists, teeth grinding, his eyes full of malice as he spat out a name. George. The moment he came back, nothing good ever followed. Chapter 14. I had no idea about the turmoil that had unfolded at the hospital. I focused on accompanying Anna through the social engagements. By the time the banquet ended, Anna was already slightly tipsy, and I supported her as we left together. Anna's company handled a massive volume of business. Relocating operations back wasn't going to be easy. From the day I joined the Sioux group, I had already prepared myself for a long-term battle. Anna rented an apartment for me across from her own place. Once everything was finally done, the driver took the 2 of us back. Feeling stifled, I opened the window to let in some air. Anna quietly watched me for a while. The glow of the streetlights fell across my body, making me look inexplicably lonely. Even before returning to a city, she had sensed my tension, and she had heard plenty of rumors about the entanglement between Willow and me. She could clearly feel that after seeing Willow again, my mood had noticeably sunk. Anna suddenly spoke up. You and Willow. I fell silent for a few seconds, then turned back to her with a smile and said frankly, it was just the kind of relationship you've heard about. I looked at Anna seriously. Over the past month or so, we had gotten along very well. Willow came from an elite, powerful family. No matter how refined her upbringing, there was still an ingrained pride born of class. Anna, on the other hand, had climbed her way up from the bottom step by step. Her parents had a harmonious marriage and gentle personalities. She had grown up in a home full of love. That environment shaped Anna into someone measured yet considerate, meticulous yet humorous. She could keenly sense my emotions and always knew how to catch every topic I tossed her way. I wasn't in love with her yet, but I also didn't resist the idea of marrying her. Anna gave me a sense of closeness and trust akin to family, almost like a sister. Right now, between us, there was a little less intimacy than lovers, and a little more tenderness than friends. We hadn't pierced that final layer of ambiguity, but we both knew that what lay between us was moving toward marriage. I had no intention of hiding anything and was just about to speak when Anna suddenly laughed. "You're telling me about your past with your ex-girlfriend, aren't you worried I'll get jealous?" A trace of embarrassment surfaced on my face. "I never planned to hide it from you. I had been Willow's lover for 7 years. It wasn't exactly something to be proud of, but since I was seriously considering marriage with Anna, I had never thought of concealing it." Anna suddenly leaned closer to me. In her usually playful eyes, a rare hint of possessiveness surfaced. "George, I don't care what your past was like. I only care whether your future includes me." I froze, meeting her gaze. My heart skipped a beat, belatedly falling out of rhythm. The banquet hall wasn't far from where we lived. Anna smiled suddenly. "Want to get out and walk for a bit?" I was already feeling uncomfortable from the alcohol, so I immediately agreed. Anna had the driver pull over. The emotions that had dipped after running into Willow slowly began to warm again. I took the initiative to explain. "Willow has a severe allergy-prone constitution. When I was her secretary, I got used to carrying allergy medicine in my bag. After I resigned, I just forgot to take it out. I didn't prepare it especially for her." Anna Sue laughed and teased. "I understand. You've only been with Sue Group for a few days, and I already deeply appreciate how outstanding and professional Secretary Wong is. Thanks to President Liu letting you go, I got lucky." Seeing her look as if she'd struck gold, I couldn't help laughing. Anna's hand dropped naturally and slowly intertwined with mine. Her soft hand slipped into my palm. I paused for a moment, then quickly relaxed, interlacing my fingers with hers as we walked forward side by side. Halfway through, Anna's heels began rubbing painfully against her heels, so I simply bent down and carried her on my back. We chatted as we made our way home. With the alcohol rising, I rambled on about my past with Willow. Anna wrapped her arms around my neck, her cheek resting against my broad back, listening gently as I spoke. I said hoarsely, "Being by Willow's side all those years, she showed me a lot of the world and taught me many things about the workplace. Every step I've taken in life counts. I accept them all. I don't hate her, and I don't regret it, but I also won't cling to it." After lying there for a long while, Anna drifted off to sleep on my shoulder. Noticing her breathing slow, I couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. As we walked, we soon arrived downstairs. I lifted my gaze and met the eyes of the woman standing below. Willow was leaning against the car door, having waited in the piercing cold wind for quite some time. The cold wind hadn't extinguished the fire in her heart, but the intimate scene between George and Anna chilled her heart to the core. Standing there earlier, she had thought of many things: how to explain herself to George, how to bring him back to her side. She had imagined George's reactions, his expressions, his anger, or his surprise, but she had never imagined seeing another woman sleeping so intimately on his shoulder. A chill crept up from Willow's feet. She called out to me, her voice trembling slightly. "George." I frowned, but still patted Anna gently, my tone softening. "Anna, wake up." Anna stirred groggily. "We're home." She struggled to get down, and I carefully set her on her feet. "Just waking up." Anna was unsteady when her feet touched the ground. I instinctively tightened my grip to support her, and she fell straight into my arms. Watching this, Willow finally snapped. She strode forward and grabbed my arm, yanking me away. There was a sharp chill between her brows, anger threading her voice. "How long are you two planning to keep clinging to each other?" Anna, facing Willow's familiar face, finally woke up completely. I frowned as well, raised my hand to shake Willow off, my voice noticeably colder. "Miss Liu, why are you here?" Willow clenched her teeth and turned directly to Anna. "Miss Sue, George and I have something to discuss. Please excuse us." Anna didn't move. She looked at me instead, silently asking for my opinion. "Miss Liu, if there's something to say, you can say it directly." I placed a steadying hand on Anna and said calmly to Willow, "Anna is my fiancée. I don't want my fiancé to misunderstand." Chapter 15. Willow's expression darkened instantly. She repeated the word I had used. "Fiancé." Fury flared in her eyes. Looking down at my stubborn face, she almost laughed in anger. The loyal dog she thought would come back the moment she beckoned had actually grown fangs and claws, and worse, had truly managed to wound her. Willow narrowed her eyes and looked at me meaningfully. "Are you sure you want to talk about our business in front of your fiancé?" Her tone carried a casual, provocative intimacy. I immediately frowned. After a brief hesitation, I still turned to Anna and spoke gently. Go back first. I'll talk to her, Anna asked. You'll be all right on your own. I smiled. Don't worry. Anna glanced at Willow's dark expression and reminded me quietly. Call me anytime. I nodded. Only then did Anna step aside. She couldn't hear what we were saying, but if anything happened, she could come over immediately. The silent understanding between Anna and me stirred an intense wave of jealousy in Willow. She didn't believe Anna was truly George's fiancée, but she could clearly see the affection Anna had for him. Watching Anna's retreating figure, Willow let out a cold laugh and, slightly losing control, hurled sharp words at me. So hard to part. What? She's your next target now. Does she know you were with me for 7 years, that we had a child, that we did all sorts of things in bed? Can she satisfy you in bed? Enough. My face darkened as well. I stared at her coldly, my chest heaving with anger. The moment she mentioned the child, I uncontrollably recalled that day. Her coldness, her lofty detachment, the helpless grief of having no choice at all. It made me not want to look at Willow for even a second longer. I turned around, about to leave. Willow, whatever existed between us ended long ago. I already left the Lou group. What happens between Anna and me has nothing to do with you. If you don't want me to treat my time with you as a dark stain in my life, then shut up. Seeing the indifference on my face, pain stabbed into Willow's chest. The next second, she stepped forward and threw herself into my arms. Feeling that familiar embrace again, the jealousy boiling inside her seemed to be doused at once. She clung to me tightly, her voice softening, trembling slightly as she murmured, I really miss you. My whole body stiffened. Willow rarely showed such tenderness, and when she did, it was almost always followed by intimacy in bed. Alarm bells rang instantly in my mind. The next moment, I felt her lean in, her lips seeking mine. Willow, you can't. But she half forcefully wrapped an arm around my waist, ignoring my resistance entirely. Willow, don't. I struggled desperately, but she paid no heed. As if she had decided that I didn't truly want to reject her, I finally snapped, shoved her away with all my strength, and shouted, Enough. Chapter 16. Willow was shoved away by me so abruptly that she staggered back several steps, nearly falling to the ground. The atmosphere froze instantly. Willow looked up at me in disbelief, fury surging in her eyes. She frowned. George, you. But before she could finish, a hand suddenly reached in from the side and landed squarely across Willow's cheek. Smack. The sharp sound rang out. Anna hadn't gone far. Seeing Willow force a kiss on me, she finally lost her restraint and rushed over. 5 clear finger marks instantly appeared on Willow's face. Anna pulled me behind her protectively and glanced back at me. Are you okay? I shook my head. I'm fine. Anna was usually calm and composed. I had never seen her this angry before. Willow looked up at Anna standing in front of me and let out a cold laugh. Looking for death. She raised her hand and swung at Anna. Anna quickly dodged. I was instantly alarmed. Anna rushed forward, and the two of them started fighting. You hit me. I hit you. Back and forth. In no time, both of them were injured. My head was spinning. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop them. In the end, I had no choice but to call the neighborhood security. Only then were we barely able to separate the two of them. Willow, who always looked so noble and aloof, was now bruised and swollen, utterly disheveled. Anna, who always appeared gentle and sweet, now had messy hair and had lost her usual composure. I ignored Willow completely and went straight to Anna. Seeing the scratches on her face left by Willow's nails, I was filled with worry and guilt. I carefully lifted my hand, wanting to touch her cheek but afraid it would hurt. Are you okay? Anna's expression softened. She looked at me gently. I'm fine. Willow was in pain all over as well. Yet she saw that I didn't spare her a single glance, focusing only on Anna. She instantly wanted to rush over and hit Anna again, her heart filled with grievance and resentment. George, I was hit too, and I was hurt worse than her. How can you only care about her? I merely cast her a cold glance. She's my fiancée. What does that make you to me? Even if we had once been lovers, that relationship had long since been severed, by her own words. My icy sentence drained the color from Willow's face. For 7 years, I had been her secretary, always putting her first no matter what. When danger arose, I was always the first to rush forward. If she was injured even slightly, I was more anxious than anyone. But now, right in front of her, I had given my concern to another woman. An inexplicable sense of grievance rose in Willow's heart. Along with it came a trace of panic. She looked at our intimate posture and murmured, She really is your fiancée. I sighed, then interlaced my fingers with Anna's and lifted our joined hands for Willow to see. Miss Lou, there's no reason for me to lie to you. I told you many times before that I was going back to my hometown for an arranged meeting. Anna and I are seeing each other with marriage as the goal. Please stop embarrassing yourself by coming back again. Chapter 17. The color drained from Willow's face in an instant. She didn't even have the presence of mind to care about her injuries anymore. She stared blankly at the hands Anna and I were holding together. She could no longer deceive herself, my eyes were filled with sincerity. After 7 years of working together, she knew I wasn't lying. Even if she had never intended to marry me, she had never imagined that I would marry someone else so quickly. After saying my piece, I didn't spare her another glance. I simply took Anna's hand and led her upstairs. I'll put some medicine on you. We lived in apartments directly opposite each other. Anna had been here more than once already. I had her sit down on the sofa, then hurried to fetch the first aid kit. Anna leaned back against the sofa, tilting her face up slightly, letting me tend to her injuries. Looking at the marks marring her delicate face, I felt both helpless and distressed. Next time, don't be so impulsive. It'll probably take a few days for this to fully go down. Anna hadn't said much since we came in. She kept her gaze fixed on me. After hearing my words, her eyes darkened slightly, and she spoke softly. I can't stay indifferent when someone forcibly kisses my fiancé. I froze, guilt rising as I looked at her. I'm sorry. Anyone would feel uncomfortable seeing something like that. I instinctively began. Anna, if you want. Before I could finish, Anna suddenly reached out, grabbed my tie, and yanked. Caught off guard, I fell forward, bracing my hands on the sofa, effectively caging her in my arms. The distance between us instantly became intimate and charged. The next moment, Anna leaned closer. Her voice dropped lower, tinged with nervousness. George, I just want you to be mine. She moved forward, her lips nearing mine. Just as her lips were about to touch me, there was a brief pause. That instant was enough for me to pull away. My hands tensed slightly, and I even held my breath without realizing it. But in the end, I didn't dodge, I silently allowed it. A smile rippled through Anna's eyes as she kissed me without hesitation. When the kiss ended, Anna went soft in my arms, shy now, not daring to meet my gaze. I let out a soft laugh by her ear, my voice light with warmth. Get some rest early, I saw her off, then turned back to take a shower and lie down on the bed. Thinking about Willow's inexplicable persistence, I didn't believe she was unable to let me go out of love. More likely, after years of my unquestioning obedience, she simply couldn't adapt to my leaving. She had always regarded me as her possession, so her jealousy surfaced. As I thought about it, my mind drifted to Anna's kiss. I lifted a hand and touched my lips, curling my fingers slightly in silence. I didn't resist it. My thoughts were a mess. I tossed and turned for quite a while before finally falling asleep. After watching George and Anna leave together, Willow had no choice but to drive away under the guarded gazes of the security staff. Not far from the complex, she pulled over to the side of the road. Her face and body ached faintly where Anna had hit her. Yet George hadn't even looked at her, let alone said a single word of concern. But what was harder to bear than the physical pain was the sour ache and grievance swelling in her chest. She raised a hand and pressed it against her heart, leaning back against the seat, utterly exhausted. The overwhelming joy she had felt upon seeing George, and the crushing disappointment that followed, collided violently within her. Fragments of her past with George, memories she had never cared about before, now surfaced vividly in her mind, sweet, yet tinged with bitterness. A complex, unforgettable sensation. Willow slowly closed her eyes. She had long since stopped treating George as just a lover she could discard at will. George now affected her emotions, her joy, her anger, her sorrow. No matter how much she resisted, she had to admit it. She had already fallen in love with George. Chapter 18. Early the next morning, Anna and I set off for work together. I had already prepared 2 breakfasts. Anna took hers, but couldn't quite bring herself to meet my eyes. Before, she'd been perfectly composed, but after that intimate kiss, something between us seemed to have shifted. I noticed the shyness and unease in her gaze. I didn't point it out, only curved my lips slightly. When Anna and I arrived at the company, we quickly threw ourselves back into work. Willow didn't show up for several days in a row. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. However, when I followed Anna to another banquet not long after, I hadn't been inside for long before I suddenly saw Makoto walking straight toward me. Catching sight of him out of the corner of my eye, I instinctively frowned. Makoto's eyes were filled with malice. As he charged toward me, he didn't hesitate to raise the wineglass in his hand and fling its contents straight at my face. Trash. Again. The moment I saw him, I'd already been on guard, anticipating another outburst. When the liquid came flying toward me, I twisted my body, trying to dodge, but I knew it was pointless. Liquid spreads. Even if I avoided some of it, there was no way I'd escape completely. I could practically predict the humiliation rushing toward me. Before I could fully react, Anna stepped forward without hesitation, positioning herself directly in front of me and shielding me with her body. The wine splashed squarely across her back, soaking into her dress. I stared at her in shock. Anna asked, "Are you okay?" I shook my head blankly, warmth flooding my chest as guilt followed close behind. I should have been the one protecting you, but Anna didn't care about that at all. She quickly checked me over, and only after confirming I hadn't been splashed did she turn around, her face dark as she stared at the stunned Makoto Ito. Mr. Ito, you'd better give me and my fiancé an explanation. Seeing me protected in Anna's arms, then meeting the fury in her eyes, Makoto began to tremble with rage. The day Willow announced the cancellation of the engagement, he'd immediately gone home to discuss countermeasures with his parents. The Ito family had always been reaching above their station by aligning with the Liu family. When Ito's father learned of Makoto's schemes, he was so furious that he slapped him on the spot. Ito's father then dragged Makoto's ex-girlfriend straight into an operating room. The very next day after the surgery, Ito's father had dragged Makoto to kneel at the Liu family's doorstep, begging forgiveness and offering explanations. And yet, even after he'd humbled himself to that extent, Willow had still chosen to call off the engagement without hesitation. Makoto knew it. All of this was because of George. That was why the moment he saw George, he couldn't control himself and rushed over. What he hadn't expected was for Anna to block him. Watching Anna defend George so fiercely, Makoto was consumed by jealousy. Why? Why did a man like George deserve Willow's obsession? Why, after leaving Willow, did he get to find a woman who was in no way inferior to her? And even more, Anna had actually called him her fiancé. Losing control, Makoto roared. Anna, do you even know what kind of trash the man you're protecting really is? He was nothing but a plaything, kept by Willow for years, then kicked aside. That's why he latched onto you. Ah. Before Makoto could finish, a wave of ice-cold liquid poured down over his head. Makoto let out a startled scream and turned his head in panic. Standing there was Willow, holding an empty glass, her expression utterly emotionless as she looked at him. Chapter 19. Her gaze was cold to the extreme, and Makoto couldn't help but tremble. His face drained of color as he looked at Willow. Willow. Willow, how could you treat me like this? A frigid curve lifted at Willow's lips. She took another glass of wine and, right in front of Makoto, poured it straight down over his head. Ah! Makoto screamed, frantically wiping the wine from his face as he looked up at Willow in disbelief. Willow only watched his humiliation indifferently. Why shouldn't I? She snapped her fingers, and the bodyguards at her side stepped forward at once. Willow gave a cold order. Mr. Ito likes splashing drinks on people. Go, let him taste what that feels like. She raised her hand and casually pointed toward the champagne tower not far away. Yes, ma'am, the bodyguards answered. The next moment, two of them dragged Makoto toward the champagne tower. Makoto struggled desperately. Willow, don't. I know I was wrong. Don't do this to me. No, Willow, you bitch. All eyes in the banquet hall turned in their direction. Makoto had always been vindictive, outwardly smiling and harmless, but secretly having offended many people. Now, plenty were pointing and whispering, openly enjoying his downfall. Makoto broke down, crying hysterically. Let go of me. Let go. I'm the young master of the Ito family. How dare you treat me like this? The bodyguards ignored him, pinning him beside the champagne tower. In his struggle, Makoto knocked over several glasses. They shattered instantly, and his hand pressed straight down onto the shards. He screamed in agony, his whole body shaking. Willow showed not the slightest trace of pity, watching without expression. Wine mixed with blood spread across the floor. Makoto writhed in pain, and in the end, collapsed unconscious. Only then did Willow instruct the bodyguards, send him to the hospital. Once he was taken away, the attendants quickly cleaned up the mess. The banquet hall returned to its glittering elegance, as though nothing had happened at all. I lost interest halfway through watching. I thought of the time Makoto, still Willow's fiancé, had gone to the company to warn me, and how Willow had sided with him without hesitation. I thought of the resignation letter I never got to submit, of Willow's cold indifference when she told me to resign, and of how she had personally taken a glass of ice water and poured it over my head. She had always been this ruthless. Back then, it was toward me. Now, it was toward Makoto. Willow turned to look for me, but all she saw was Anna and me leaving together. She hurried after us and blocked my path. Her eyes burned as they fixed on me. Let's talk. I stepped back half a pace. Although you did help me just now, your fiancé was the one who struck first. We're even. Willow gave a brief, bitter smile. I've broken off the engagement with Makoto. A flicker of surprise passed through my eyes, but I had no interest in asking more. I only looked at her coolly. There's nothing for us to talk about. My gaze held undisguised wariness and rejection. A sharp pain pierced Willow's chest. Almost humbly, she reached out and grabbed my arm. I promise, it'll just be a simple conversation. I frowned and looked toward Anna. Willow's chest felt even tighter. She had already had people investigate over the past few days. My family and Anna's were close, and we had even known each other as children. Everything I'd said was true. I hadn't been playing hard to get. I really had gone home for an arranged meeting, and Anna was that very match. Suppressing her emotions, Willow spoke first. If you're worried, Anna can wait nearby. I glanced at her. Anna also spoke up. I'll wait over there. Just like before. She moved a short distance away. Only then did I turn back to Willow. Miss Lu, what exactly do you want to say? Willow lowered her gaze, then looked up at me. George, if I said I regret it, if I want you to come back to my side, would you be willing to give me another chance? Chapter 20. Willow subconsciously held her breath, watching me with barely concealed tension. I lifted my gaze at her in surprise. I hadn't expected someone like Willow to ever want to turn back, yet almost without hesitation. I shook my head. I'm not willing. Willow stared at me blankly, then emphasized. Not as a lover, but as an official boyfriend. This time, I was genuinely startled. I looked at her in disbelief. Though clearly uncomfortable, Willow still met my gaze stubbornly, her tone almost humble. Is that possible? I paused for no more than 3 seconds before slowly shaking my head again. There's no going back. Bit by bit, the light in Willow's eyes dimmed. She looked at me, explaining anxiously and helplessly. George, you stayed by my side for so many years. I could feel how much you cared about me, how much you loved me. There have always been many people who loved me or approached me, maybe because of my status, my wealth, or simply my looks. I admit, I once dismissed your feelings, but by the time I noticed something was wrong, I had already, at some moment I wasn't even aware of, fallen in love with you. Maybe it was because every time I wanted something, you were always the first to deliver it. Maybe because whenever I turned around, you were always there, giving me a sense of security. Maybe it was our unspoken understanding in life, even our compatibility in bed. I've already fallen in love with you. I just realized it a little too late. Can't you give me one more chance? She was humble. There was even confusion and disbelief in her eyes, as if she couldn't understand how George, who had loved her so deeply before, could now stop loving her so easily and turn to another woman. For 7 years at the Lu Group, George had tried with all his might to get close to her, to be worthy of her. They had fought side by side, weathered countless storms together. When rivals had wanted her dead, George had stepped in front of her without hesitation. He had taken a knife for her, been injured for her. He had loved her so fiercely. How could he now simply stop loving her and choose someone else? I looked at her, as if seeing someone who had always sat high upon an untouchable pedestal, now willing to bow her head before me. A sense of unreal absurdity rose within me. This was the first time we were standing face to face, meeting each other's gaze on truly equal ground. Seeing me look up at her without speaking, Willow grew anxious. You don't believe what I'm saying. Before, when I was cold toward you, it wasn't because I was tired of you, it was because I realized I had developed feelings for you that were different. All my life, I was raised with elite education. I was taught that interest comes first, that marriages must be between equals. I never thought I would fall for you. I was afraid of letting you influence my emotions. So my first reaction was resistance, avoidance. To protect herself, she had subconsciously pushed me away, rushed into an engagement, and drawn a clear line between us. I looked up at her and said calmly, I believe what you're saying. My tone was even. Seeing that I believed her, Willow instinctively felt a surge of hope, but I shook my head again. However, Willow, I don't love you anymore. The smile that hadn't yet fully formed on her face froze completely. I looked at her, as though I had fallen into memory, remembering countless moments we had shared together. Chapter 21. Willow seemed to realize something. Almost instinctively, she wanted to tell me not to go on, but her lips trembled, and the words of protest never came out. She knew that whatever I was about to say would leave her in unbearable pain. Yet she still wanted to hear it, to know why. My steady but icy voice reached her ears. Every word turned into a sharp blade, carving her until she was left bleeding all over. I spoke softly. Willow, falling in love with you was actually very easy. You're outstanding. You shine brightly. Even though you're a woman, you're exceptionally gifted in business. Just a casual piece of advice from you could benefit me enormously. But loving you was exhausting. For 7 years, I chased after you with everything I had, just to stand beside you. A single small step you took meant countless sleepless nights of desperate catching up for me. I could only revolve around you. I lost my own preferences, my own life. I existed merely as Willow's secretary. I existed, but I never truly lived as myself. I never dared to be myself in front of you. Maybe it was in every moment when I felt worn out. Maybe it was when you wavered in your feelings toward me, hot and cold without certainty. Maybe it was when I heard you tell your friends that you'd never fall for me. Maybe it was the moment you chose to discard me. Maybe it was when you knew Makoto was in the wrong, yet still protected him unconditionally simply because he was your fiancé. Maybe it was the moment you were pushed onto the operating table and we lost our child. I was truly exhausted, and I truly couldn't love anymore. I let out a bitter smile. Maybe you really do love me now, but so what? Weighing pros and cons is etched into your bones. If it weren't Makoto, there would be some other men. I can't be sure that at some point in the future, I wouldn't be abandoned by you again, and I would still be powerless to resist, Just like when you decided to kill our child. And I couldn't object at all. I don't want to experience that again. Besides, you don't actually know me. Willow's face was deathly pale. I won't do that again. She wanted to say she loved me, that she would never do that again, that she could make countless promises, give me everything to make me feel secure. After 7 years together, how could she possibly not know me? But when she saw the indifference in my eyes, she knew it was useless. No matter how much she gave now, it wouldn't matter. She had personally destroyed my trust in her. Willow didn't even dare to meet my gaze. The version of herself reflected there was far too pitiful. She turned abruptly and fled in disarray. And the moment she left, the tears I had been holding back finally fell. Anna stepped forward and gently took my hand. I turned and leaned into her embrace, unable to stop myself from crying. I was silently saying goodbye to my past self. Like scraping away rotting flesh from an old wound, it hurt terribly, but only by doing so could the wound finally heal. I thought that after making things clear with Willow, she would stop disturbing my life, but a few days later, when I got off work, I saw the elevator occupied. Several workers were moving furniture in and out. At a glance, the furniture was clearly expensive and unmistakably suited to someone's tastes. A strange, ominous sense of absurdity rose in my chest. That very day, as I was watching the furniture being moved, the doorbell rang. Expressionless, I looked at the video doorbell display. Willow's cool, beautiful face appeared on the screen. I felt nothing but speechless. I opened the door and looked at her without expression. Willow, on the other hand, looked perfectly natural. She smiled and greeted me. "Hello, new neighbor." I raised my hand and went to close the door immediately. Willow hurriedly stuck her foot into the gap to stop it. She looked at me anxiously. "George, don't be angry. I've thought a lot about what you said. These years, you really were the one chasing after me, giving so much, enduring so much. So from now on, let me be the one who treats you well. I'll prove to you that I won't hurt or disappoint you like I did before." I only said a few words. No need. With that, I slammed the door shut. Willow hurriedly pulled her foot back just in time, otherwise, she might have been hurt. Chapter 22. I never imagined that Willow could have such a shameless side. The very next morning, when I left for work, she was already waiting at my door, holding a bag of breakfast, the kind I used to order often back when I worked at the Lou Group. She handed it to me. "Your favorite from before." I glanced at it indifferently and said flatly, "I ordered it often back then not because I liked it, but because you liked it. I actually hate their pastries." Willow's expression froze on the spot. Just then, Anna opened the door across the hall, carrying 2 breakfasts. I took one from her, and we walked forward together. Willow Lou stood there blankly for a few seconds, then quickly followed after us. "Then what do you like to eat? I'll bring it for you tomorrow." I looked at her. "Miss Lou, I actually preferred it when you were arrogant and untamed." Willow was left speechless. Anna laughed softly. It was the first time Willow had seen me sharp-tongued, almost cutting and cold. While she felt stifled, she also felt an odd sense of novelty. She finally understood what I meant when I said she didn't really know me, and she finally understood why I had said I was tired. She suddenly felt a little heartache, and a little sadness. I had carved myself into the version she liked, bit by bit, until I gradually lost myself. But something that truly belongs to a person, how could it be so easily discarded? So I bore countless wounds, grew exhausted to the extreme, and chose to leave her behind. Willow didn't give up. On the contrary, the more setbacks she faced, the more determined she became. The next day, she started bringing different breakfasts, several places at once, just in case there was something I liked. Every morning when I arrived at the office, I'd receive flowers from her, which I would immediately throw away or give to colleagues. Every time I went home, several gift boxes would be hanging at my door, things she had personally bought for me. Even when I returned them to her door without hesitation, accepting not a single item, it didn't deter her. I thought someone as proud as her wouldn't last more than a few days. I didn't expect her to persist for an entire month. No matter how I rejected her, it made no difference. Almost everyone in a city knew she was pursuing me. Even her friends took turns coming to persuade me to reconcile with Willow. I had absolutely no intention of rekindling old flames. Instead, I was utterly fed up. What I feared most was a misunderstanding. Anna and I had an exceptional level of tacit understanding. We respected each other, having known each other since childhood. Even after years apart, Anna was still one of the people who understood me best. I never hid my thoughts from her. Being with her made me comfortable and at ease. If I had to choose someone to spend my life with, I wouldn't hesitate. I would choose Anna. Anna didn't say much, but whenever Willow did something, she'd inevitably do even more. If Willow bought breakfast, Anna would cook personally, making exactly what I liked. If Willow sent gifts, even though I returned them, Anna would buy me a whole pile. If I refused to accept them, she'd spread her hands and say they were employee rewards and couldn't be returned. If I refused again, she'd say they were gifts for her fiancé, If I wouldn't accept them, did that mean I was dissatisfied with her as my fiancée? Faced with a gentle, beautiful woman acting cute while holding a mountain of gifts, it was hard to say no. In the end, I usually had no choice but to accept them and get thoroughly kissed in the process. If it were just Anna and me, it would have been a kind of playful intimacy, helping to build affection between engaged partners. But with Willow added to the mix, it started to feel like a three-way battlefield. Even the Sue group and Lou group had practically become sworn enemies, clashing openly and fiercely in the business world. I was exhausted from dealing with it all. Just then, there happened to be a cooperation project that required traveling to a neighboring city. Anna Sue couldn't get away, so I packed my bags overnight and set off. Chapter 23. The moment I landed in the neighboring city, a strange sense of danger crept over me, as if someone were watching me. Instinctively, I scanned my surroundings, but everyone passing by looked like ordinary travelers. Everyone seemed suspicious, yet at the same time, it felt as though I was overthinking it. I quickened my pace, left the airport, and met up with colleagues from the branch office. After meeting them, that feeling of being watched eased somewhat. I didn't dwell on it any further. Instead of going to the hotel to rest, I headed straight to the branch office with my colleagues, then brought the local team along to meet the partner. After a full day of non-stop work, I finally returned to the hotel. I had just finished settling in when my phone rang. Seeing that it was Anna calling, I subconsciously smiled and answered. We chatted naturally about the progress of the day's work. Originally, this cooperation was supposed to be negotiated by Anna in person. She had been held up unexpectedly, so I decided to come alone first to finalize things. As we were talking, I vaguely heard the sound of someone swiping a card at the door. However, the door didn't open when I entered earlier. I had instinctively locked it and fastened the chain as well. There was a brief silence outside. Then, suddenly, the doorbell rang. Anna and I paused mid-conversation. I walked toward the door. The doorbell kept ringing, accompanied by a woman's gentle, polite voice. "Hello, I'm very sorry to disturb you. There seems to be an issue with the check-in information you registered, and we need to verify it again with you." Without thinking too much, phone still in hand, I reached the door and raised my hand to open it. Anna, hearing the exchange, said from the phone, "An issue with the check-in information. This hotel is a long-term partner of the branch office." How could something suddenly, before Anna could finish, the sense of being followed when I left the airport suddenly resurfaced in my mind. And then there was the sound earlier, someone trying to open the door directly. My heart slammed hard against my chest. I immediately pulled my hand back from the doorknob. I looked through the peephole. Sure enough, there was only a woman in a staff uniform standing outside, knocking. But I didn't dare let my guard down. After a moment's thought, I went to the bedside and used the internal line to call the front desk. "Hello, there's a staff member knocking on my door saying there's an issue with my check-in information. I'd like to confirm whether that's actually the case." Before I could finish, the front desk replied in confusion. "No, there isn't." The front desk's voice faintly carried through the phone. Anna immediately warned, "George, don't open the door. Get hotel security up there right now." I hurriedly told the front desk, "Security, send security to my room immediately." The moment I finished speaking, a loud bang came from the door. It was being kicked. My entire body jolted in fright. On the phone, Anna urgently instructed the driver, "Drive faster. George, don't be afraid, I'm on my way." She had originally planned to drive over as soon as she finished work, wanting to surprise me. She never expected something like this to happen. The room I was staying in happened to be a suite with a living room. The door was being kicked repeatedly, looking like it was about to give way. I rushed into the bedroom, locked that door as well, then scrambled to find something to brace against it, trying to delay the intruder as long as possible. But just as I pushed a small table against the bedroom door, the main door outside was kicked open with a deafening crash. I clearly heard a familiar voice ring out, "George, let's see how long you can keep hiding." Makoto. Chapter 24. I never imagined that Makoto would chase me all the way to a neighboring city, just to come after me. I clenched my teeth. "Makoto, have you completely lost your mind?" I asked myself honestly. I had never gone out of my way to offend Makoto. At worst, I wasn't friendly toward him, yet it was always Makoto who refused to let me go. Outside the door, Makoto's voice was arrogant and vicious. "You stole my woman, did you think I'd just let that slide? In a city, Willow and Anna were protecting you. Here, let's see who can protect you now." Because Willow had issued a warning to the Ito family, Makoto had been confined at home by his parents these past days, forbidden from going out. How could Makoto Ito possibly swallow that humiliation? He couldn't afford to provoke the Liu family, but did he really think he couldn't deal with George? If it weren't for George, how would he have ended up targeted by the Liu family? He had long since come to hate me to the bone, but with Willow and Anna watching closely, he'd had no chance. Now that I'd finally left a city, he'd been waiting for this moment. He barked an order to his bodyguards. "Hurry up! Smash the door down!" Almost the instant his words fell, a bodyguard lifted his foot and kicked hard at the bedroom door. The bedroom lock was nowhere near as sturdy as the front door. I hurriedly retreated several steps, and sure enough, the next moment, the door was kicked open with brutal force. At the doorway stood several large, imposing bodyguards. Behind them, Makoto looked at me coldly. When he saw the phone in my hand, Makoto signaled with his eyes. A bodyguard immediately stepped forward, snatched the phone from my hand, and smashed it viciously against the floor. I tried to struggle, but the next second, 2 bodyguards restrained me. One of them kicked hard at the back of my knee. Pain exploded through me, and I was forced down onto my knees. Makoto walked up to me, looking down at me from above. "George, you didn't expect a day like this, did you?" Stringing Willow along while clinging to Anna, "Were you feeling pretty proud of yourself? Thought you were finally about to rise through the ranks?" He unzipped the small bag he carried and pulled out a bottle of liquid. When he looked at me again, his eyes were filled with venom. "I want to see, after I ruin this face of yours, who will still want to marry you." The moment the words left his mouth, he twisted the cap open and hurled the liquid straight at me. I had already guessed what he was holding. My face drained of color, and in terror, I squeezed my eyes shut. Suddenly, I heard a cry filled with panic and worry. "George!" In the next instant, I was wrapped tightly in a familiar embrace. A woman held me close, shielding me completely, covering me so thoroughly it was as if she wanted to block everything. A sharp, acrid smell spread through the air. The woman's body stiffened instantly, trembling for a split second. Makoto's incredulous voice rang out. "Willow, how did you get here? You." At the same time, Willow's bodyguards rushed in, swiftly subduing everyone Makoto had brought with him. Willow loosened her hold on me and lowered her gaze, checking me over for injuries. After confirming I was unharmed, she finally let out a breath. "Thank goodness, thank goodness." I looked at her pale face and the cold sweat beading on her forehead. My eyes instantly burned red. "Willow, how did you?" Willow forced a faint smile. "I got word that Makoto had secretly come to the neighboring city, and it just so happened that you were here on a business trip. I was worried something might happen. Luckily, I made it in time." As she spoke, her eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Her vision went dark, and she collapsed forward. I instinctively caught her, stopping her from falling to the ground, and in that moment, I saw her back. The sulfuric acid Makoto had splashed had all landed on her back. Even with her clothes in between, it was already a bloody, mangled mess. My tears surged uncontrollably. I followed her bodyguards, rushing her straight to the hospital. After a frantic effort, Willow was finally sent into the operating room for emergency treatment. Not long after, Anna arrived in a hurry. Seeing me outside the operating room, Anna ran over immediately, checking me first to see if I was hurt. With reddened eyes, I said, "I'm fine." It all landed on Willow. Anna tightly held my hand. "She'll be okay." Anna immediately arranged for the best doctors to treat Willow. The surgery went very smoothly. Willow made it through the critical stage, though severe scars would remain on her back, ones that could never be completely erased. I stayed in the hospital, taking care of her until the day she fully recovered and was discharged. After this period of close contact, Willow finally saw things clearly. George no longer loved her. What remained was only gratitude. In front of her, George would take care of everything, arrange everything properly, but when he was with Anna, he was far more relaxed. He allowed himself to make mistakes. On the day she was discharged, Anna and I went together to pick her up. Willow looked at Anna standing not far away, then turned to me and asked, "Will we still be friends in the future?" I froze for a moment, then nodded. Willow opened her mouth. "When you get married, remember to send me an invitation." Before she could finish, she suddenly added, "Forget it. Don't send it. It's better if I don't know." I looked at her gently and said nothing more. After leaving the hospital, Willow never came to disturb me again. Makoto Ito was imprisoned for intentional assault. No matter how much the Ito family begged, it was useless. The Lu group and the Su group were no longer at odds like before. Instead, they joined forces and drove the Ito family into bankruptcy. Half a year later, Anna, Su and I held our wedding. True to my word, I didn't send an invitation, but on the wedding day, across the sea of people, I still saw her, wearing a mask and a baseball cap, dressed low-key, standing far away. Another year passed, and Anna was found to be pregnant. At that time, Willow was busy working in her office. When she heard the news, she froze. She couldn't read a single word on the documents in front of her. She thought of the child she and George had once had. She had, in fact, considered keeping that child, but back then, she had ultimately made a choice she would regret for the rest of her life. If she hadn't chosen to abort that child, if she had been able to see her own heart clearly in time and truly cherish George, would the happy family of 3 now have been them? Unfortunately, life never has if-onlys. In the end, She had lost the most precious thing she would ever have in this lifetime.